Well, it's always a pleasure to have Julie Kelly on, and when there's some breaking story about the cabal of radical Marxist judges in Washington D.C., I always like to speak to her. And you have looked at the transcript of what took place on Monday in Judge Chutkan's courtroom when President Trump's lawyers was there, and the phalanx of the government lawyers were there. Julie Kelly, what did you find?
It was stunning. And Mark, I just want people to know, you have to pay for the transcripts, which is fine. I paid for that transcript. I have now put the entire transcript on my Substack, Declassified with Julie Kelly. I want everyone to read it. I was going to just do an article.
Hold on one second,
Mark,
Mr. Producer. Put that on all of our social platforms, please. The link. Go ahead.
Because I couldn't do her justice, right? I want people to read it for themselves, what this lunatic said in court, which, as you were talking about last night, not only the outlandish notion that Donald Trump should have been preparing for this trial a year ago, a year before he was indicted, because as she said to Trump's lawyers, well, you know that this grand jury was impaneled in September, you should have been collecting evidence or know at least what the discovery that the government or DOJ was going to produce. But what I found most outrageous, Mark, is that she compared January 6th.
Let's wait there 1 minute and explain that to the public. How many defense lawyers are preparing a defense? Preparing a defense a year or two in advance of a charge that they're not even aware that's going to be brought, or the lawyer wasn't even on the team. I mean, what kind of a stupid comment is that?
And she said it repeatedly, Mark, right? She didn't just say it one time. She actually got into sort of a low-key argument with John Lauro, Trump's defense attorney, who I'm sure had to, his jaw was probably on the ground at the thought of a federal judge admonishing a defense attorney, saying, well, you really should have known what this evidence was. You knew that this grand jury was impaneled in September. And when he kind of fought back, she said, well, I'm not saying it was your obligation, but it was your opportunity. And he had to point out, I was just hired a month and a half ago, and the indictment was handed down August 1st. But this was her justification for fast-tracking this trial.
So all these lawyers, I want to have a conversation with you. So all these lawyers, in the future, all the defense lawyers, in every case, should have anticipated, especially those that haven't even been hired yet, who might hire them and what charges might be brought, thereby allowing a trial to occur in 5 months in a massive case like this. Now, everybody knows that's stupid. Go ahead.
Yes, everyone knows that that's stupid. And so this was her justification for fast-tracking it, although, as Trump's lawyers pointed out, the government said they have 12 million pages of discovery. And the argument was, a lot of this is from Trump's materials. It's his Twitter feed. It's from his PAC. It's from the J6 committee, arguing this is sort of public information. But as you know, Mark, and any attorney listening has to be dying laughing, although, of course, it's not funny, that his lawyers or Donald Trump himself should have been compiling, millions of pages of things that might have been used for evidence in charges that he didn't even know what they were going to be.
And he didn't even know he was going to be charged. And the January 6th committee has destroyed a lot of information. All right, so this is a complete ruse. She's a complete hack. But what else did you find?
Yeah, she really is a hack. So aside from that craziness, and, she did admit the government could not come up with a single case in the D.C. District Court that went to trial within 5 months, from indictment to trial. I will tell you, Mark, as someone who's covered all this for more than 2.5 years, the average time is around 14 to 16 months for a January case to go from arrest to trial. And in high-profile trials, like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, it could be 20 to 24 months. But now she is setting this 7 months between indictment and trial. And you know what she did to justify that? She compared January 6th to the Boston Marathon bombing and to 9/11. And she said, well, in the Boston Marathon case, the defendant went to trial 2 years after the attack, after the incident. So she's patting herself on the back while comparing a 4-hour disturbance at the Capitol 30 months ago, where the only people killed were Trump supporters. She's comparing Donald Trump basically to Zacarias Moussaoui, who she cited in that, and the Sarnev brothers.
Have you ever been in her courtroom and listened to her in a case at all?
I just happened, Mark, to be in her courtroom for the one sentencing of the one defendant who went to trial. She's only had one January 6th trial, and it was a man from Alabama who went to trial on 4 misdemeanors. And I write about this, the contempt that she had for this man. It was just dripping out of her. He's a good old boy from Alabama. 4 of the common misdemeanors, refused to take a plea. She scolded him for not taking a plea deal. She scolded him for exercising his right to go to trial. She reminded him that you benefited from the very same system that you railed against on January 6th. You got public defenders. We had to pay for government lawyers. We had to compensate jurors.
She said all this?
She absolutely did. I've got the transcript.
Is she as dumb as she sounds or as radical as she sounds, or both?
I'm going to go with both. I really am. I don't think she's that bright. She's definitely radical.
We are here with a real journalist, Julie Kelly, who's done a tremendous job over the last several years covering what's going on in Washington, the courtrooms, with respect to January 6th and beyond. Julie Kelly, let me ask you a few questions. Is it not true that the first case that the DOJ brought against Trump was the documents case? Yes or no?
Yes.
Is it not true the January 6th case came afterwards?
2 months later.
So why would Judge Chutkan set a date for her trial before the date that was already set in the first trial in Florida in May, knowing full well that if she gets away with this, that trial could bleed into the what should be the first trial, but is now the second trial? She jumps the line for the purpose, doesn't she, of trying to get a quick conviction, overwhelming the defense lawyers. Clearly, there's not going to be effective representation here or due process here. She just wants a conviction in a Democrat courtroom, doesn't she?
Yes, because this is a far easier case for Jack Smith to get a conviction and, and then schedule a sentencing for Trump if this date still holds. And if these are the only charges Jack Smith is going to bring, which I still suspect he will bring more charges against Donald Trump for January 6th.
And you could be right, but if I had to guess, I would say no, because all he needs is one conviction. And then Donald Trump will run for president, they will argue, as a convicted felon. That's what this judge wants. This is what Smith wants. And so she jumps in front of the first judge in the first case after coordinating with the judge in New York in the Alvin Bragg case to change their date, because it's the same exact date, March 4th. So it not only interferes with Super Tuesday, but even more than that, as far as Trump is concerned, it is impossible. Not only a 5-month period of time to prepare for trial, he's already having a date set in Florida where they're preparing for a trial that has 1.1 million documents and 9 months of video. Now, this judge in Washington, Chutkan, she knows this. She knows that the judge in Florida has already done this. She doesn't trust that judge in Florida. She doesn't trust what will be that jury in Florida. She doesn't trust her motions decisions that she will have to make. So she jumps the other judge. I've never seen anything like this. Have you?
Well, no, I haven't. But of course, after covering this D.C. courthouse for more than 2.5 years, nothing surprises me. So her setting, 7 months between indictment and trial with all the discovery, and as you said, jumping the line over classified documents case before Judge Cannon in Southern Florida. I mean, who's going to hold her accountable, Mark? That's the problem here. These judges are the villains, right? They are the villains. They are the rot in our system. DOJ doesn't get away with any of this. Jack Smith gets away with none of it if he does not have the rubber stamp imprimatur of these the DC judges. And that's why they don't want this case to go to trial before Judge Cannon. She's already called them on numerous problems in their case. And so they don't want that case to go forward. It's a weak case. They have a tough judge, and they're not going to have the favorable jury pool that they have in Washington, D.C. So do I think for a minute Tanya Chutkan is not in correspondence through some emissary with Jack Smith's office who was like, hey, we need this trial date. We need it. We need it before the May trial date in the Mar-a-Lago case.
I have no doubt that Fani Willis and George is in touch with Jack Smith, that they've coordinated. She said as much when she was asked about that. She said, I'm not discussing my investigation. So that was obvious. And it's been reported that they were to some extent. They were to a great extent. I have no doubt that they've been in touch, Bragg's office also, with Smith, just as the judge here, Chutkan, has been in touch with the left-wing kook judge in Manhattan. These are all Democrats. It's all a cabal. And when Donald Trump had to go to court to hear the master basically read the charges against him, wasn't it you who told me that 3 Obama federal district judges in that courthouse, including the chief judge, were all sitting in the back and watching?
That's absolutely right. Chief Judge.
Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
So you have 4 Obama judges in one courtroom. When Trump is in there, you know damn well they're all talking to each other. They all got together. I'm going to tell you, I was talking about this last night. I know how that courtroom works. Or courthouse works. I've been there many times. I've had cases there. The liberal judges like to have lunch together. The other judges like to have lunch with themselves, if not at the desk. And you know damn well they all came up with this idea of March 4th. They're all laughing. It's the day before Super Tuesday. She can do whatever she wants. You're exactly right. Even the appellate court is heavy Democrat, heavy Obama, heavy Clinton. And so they say, why don't you jump the line? Even though he filed the documents case first, let's help the boy out, the prosecutor. You set the date. You don't want it too close to Judge Cannon because then everybody will figure out what you did. Well, we figured it out. I figured it out. And then they're having a grand old time. It's the day before Super Tuesday. And they also know that you have all the nuts out there with dark money behind them arguing Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And therefore, he doesn't even have to be charged with one of these January 6th idiot crimes. But if they convict him on one, that's all you're going to hear. A convicted felon that under the 14th Amendment, he can't run. They know exactly what they're doing, don't they, Julie Kelly?
Well, Mark, I'm going to throw another curveball at you that I plan on writing about, but is not really publicly known. And that is another reason for Jack Smith and Tanya Chutkan to fast track this is that 2 charges, well, the key charge, obstruction of an official proceeding, this 1512C2, had what's called a splintered ruling at the appellate court. Yep. You have one appellate defense attorney who has filed certification with the Supreme Court. I think, and there are amicus briefs being filed right now, if the Supreme Court decides in October to take up the use of that post-Enron felony, that relates to 2 out of the 4 criminal charges in Jack Smith's indictment. So if they take it up, they say that they're going to take it up, then the briefs are due, et cetera. They're going to run up the likelihood that this looks like it's going to be tossed by the Supreme Court, and they want to also try to quickly get a conviction, even if it ends up being overturned.
Because you know how they'll spin it. Well, he was still convicted, and those right-wingers on the court, led by the unethical Clarence Thomas, they all have their propaganda ready. These are really, I'm just being honest, these are Marxist tactics. The courtrooms are corrupt now, particularly in Washington, D.C., and I really believe Congress has the responsibility to at least start the process of breaking up the cabal. As you know, they created that court, breaking it up, pushing subject matter jurisdiction to some of the other jurisdictions that aren't 94% for Joe Biden. I mean, Washington, D.C. is the worst of them all. And also start moving judges in and out of that district. There's nothing that says that they have to keep that number of judges in that district. They have the power to move them. And they better damn well do something about it, because this is the greatest corruption we now face in this country, isn't it?
It's terrifying. And not only that, Mark, they need to dismantle the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office and the Washington FBI field office, because that is the triumvirate of corruption. All they do is work hand in hand. Mark, they're still arresting January. I'm getting alerts all day today. They are accelerating the charging and arrest of January 6th defendants now more than 30 months later.
I read they want to get to 3,000 people.
Right.
I just read that today.
Yep.
3,000 people, and they want. Look, I don't know the Proud Boys from the Bad Boys, but they want to give 33 years to the head of the group that wasn't even there because he has texts and other messages that they say he used to help incite and so forth and so on, and they want to put him behind bars for 33 years. Mass murderers don't get 33 years.
That's right.
Nope. And remember those two Molotov cocktail Ivy League lawyers? Where the Department of Justice went into New York and said, look, they've suffered enough. They didn't even have to serve out their 2-year terms. They went in there and they, on behalf of the government goes in there, the U.S. Attorney's Office goes in there on behalf of Main Justice, tells the judge they should be released. Nobody's ever seen anything like that before. They actually used a Molotov cocktail and had others in their trunk. They didn't even serve 2 years. So this is why people are furious, don't you think?
I absolutely do. I think it's the double standard is one thing, and I agree with you, but also seeing how they're ramping up and accelerating the pace of this investigation. To your point, Matthew Graves, the Biden-appointed prosecutor, who, we're talking about an arrest a day still this week. I think they've arrested probably 8 to 10 new people this week. So they know, people understand that something is off. But as soon as these poor people are arrested and charged, Mark, I sat with a dad today who cried and is fearful he's going to die before his son gets out of jail on absurd, ridiculous charges. What these families are going through, what these defendants are going through, and the gratification these judges take and these line prosecutors in inflicting pain on people with no criminal record, who committed no violence, who walked into a public building on a Wednesday afternoon in a building we own, and the pain, the gratification they get in inflicting pain on regular Americans simply because they protested Joe Biden's election. It's not just that it's corrupt, it's really a sick, twisted place.
Do you think some of this, we get this talk from the Democrat Party and the media about critical race theory, promoting the whole idea of white privilege and all the others. You think that mentality is seeped into the judiciary here?
I've thought about it quite a bit. I do. And I'll tell you, I'm going to write a separate piece about this with Judge Chutkan. She repeatedly uses the word privilege when she is sentencing people who pleaded guilty to low-level petty offenses like parading. You have a lot more resources than most people who come in my courtroom, is what she says. She said that about Donald Trump on Monday. Her references to white privilege and that you have attorneys and you have families that support you and you grew up in a loving home, meaning you shouldn't go to the Capitol for 15 minutes. It especially with her, it really does seep out. And that's a piece I'm going to be working on, and I will send it to you first as soon as it's done.
Because I've been wondering about it, because she in particular, but others, why wouldn't they think that way if their party's pushing that agenda? If it's being pushed throughout the federal bureaucracy, this whole idea of equity. She was a public defender for a period of time, which would make you think that maybe she'd be a little circumspect and a little sympathetic, but she's not at all. She is a bomb thrower. And there's something else going on here, and I think that's exactly what you say. And as you no doubt know, her grandfather in Jamaica was a Marxist revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
And that government there even put him in prison for a period of time. Same with her uncle. Pretty frightening. All right.
It is.
Julie Kelly, I want to thank you very much. And
Thank you.
there's one other thing I wanted to read here to you, but I don't think I found. Judge's illness. What do you know about this judge, Timothy Kelly? You know, they said, well, he's a Trump appointee. So what? We all know, you know, that a lot of these district court judges are picked based on a deal that's made with the Democrats. You know, the Republicans will get 2, the Democrats will get 1, so they can get them through. So who is this guy? Do you know?
I do, and I've written extensively about him. He was appointed by Donald Trump. He was a former federal prosecutor. He worked for Senator Grassley on the Hill. But he has been, in my opinion, Mark, one of the worst judges as it relates to January 6th. He has kept innocent men who were not accused of any violence on January 6th under pretrial detention, forcing them to languish in the D.C. Gulag and other prisons, denying their release because they were charged with obstruction and conspiracy. And he has allowed the government to get away with whatever they want to, including hiding discovery related to FBI documents and forms. His conduct has been atrocious and inhumane. So he gave a 3-hour oral ruling yesterday, Mark, which I'm also going to be posting. Just got that transcript as well. I was in the courtroom when he gave it. Almost 3 hours he yammered on and on, repeating the government's case point by point, almost as if to twist a knife in the back of these 5 men who are in orange jumpsuits. They are completely broken, and denying post-trial motions. And so he is going to lower the boom on these guys, as you said, asking for up to 33 years for 2 of the defendants, but 25 years adding domestic terror enhancements. And so I was at the courthouse today ready for the first sentencing for Enrique Tarrio, and Judge Kelly called in sick.
All right, Julie, keep reporting to us. I want to keep bringing you back. Thank you, and God bless you, my friend.